things just got a whole load worse for Meghan Markle because her sister Samantha ain't going anywhere.
I do believe because there are no delivery certificates.
In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
What if the so-called royal fairy tale was nothing but smoke and mirrors? Imagine this: Meghan Markle, the woman the world saw as a glowing mother, the bold duchess, the fearless voice of modern royalty, wasn't actually rising above tradition, but playing a role written for her from day one. Some even claim she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad, and that sting cuts deep.
This scandal comes as no surprise. Speculation about the children has been simmering for years.
For years, Meghan carefully shaped the image of an outsider who stormed the gates of the monarchy, rewriting rules with every headline. She spoke of her childhood, saying, "I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows I would have loved to have had siblings." She even painted pregnancy as a fairy tale moment, saying Archie would finally have someone.
I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows. I would have loved to have had siblings, so I'm so excited to be pregnant so that Archie has someone.
But according to her half-sister Samantha Markle, that heartwarming tale was nothing more than a performance, carefully scripted for maximum sympathy. And here's the kicker: the cracks are finally showing. This isn't just about messy family drama or some old sibling feud. No, what's being exposed is a web of deliberate deception so sharp it could rock the monarchy itself. If the public starts believing Meghan's every move was orchestrated, then the polished image of independence collapses into scandal. The question is no longer whether she broke royal tradition. It's whether she built her entire empire on a carefully staged lie.
And there's a very big difference. It was deliberate.
We're not talking about bad press or harmless gossip here. This goes way deeper. These are allegations that Meghan didn't just bend the truth. She flat out manufactured an entire new identity for herself. A brand new version of Meghan, polished, packaged, and sold to the world as royal perfection.
This crisis won't die down until the irrefutable truth comes out.
Some people online whisper about the unthinkable, even suggesting her children are fake, calling them AI creations. Wild claims, yes, but once those seeds are planted, they grow fast. Because when a mysterious woman steps forward claiming she was the real mother behind Meghan's flawless pregnancies, the story instantly shifts. The question is no longer, will Meghan pull off another glossy interview? It becomes, can the Duchess survive the truth if it explodes into the spotlight?
People think her kids are fake, they think they're AI.
And here's where Samantha Markle enters the battlefield. She didn't step into the spotlight to cry about being left out. She came swinging, armed with accusations that ripped straight through the carefully curated facade Meghan built brick by brick. From her very first words, Samantha flipped the whole narrative upside down.
Like, why lie? It was just so truly bizarre.
Silence everybody and just produce a DNA sample.
Meghan isn't the victim here, Samantha claims. She's the mastermind of her own empire of illusions. Samantha puts it bluntly. This isn't authenticity. It's theater. A Hollywood script in disguise, dressed up in royal lace, sold as reality, but dripping with scandal. And millions are now wondering, was Meghan ever the real deal at all? According to Samantha, Meghan didn't just distance herself from family. She erased them like they were nothing but inconvenient footnotes. Every glossy biography, every tearful interview, every perfectly staged humanitarian photo op, Samantha claims, was less reality and more propaganda. That's not family, that's marketing, plain and simple. Meghan didn't climb into royalty with grace, Samantha argues. She rewrote her own backstory to fit the role. Anyone who didn't match the carefully polished image got cut out, scrubbed from her narrative. Family roots? Gone. Childhood struggles? Rewritten.
If you had those things, it would be very easy just to put them out there and say, this is what happened. This is what it is.
Even motherhood itself, Samantha says, became Meghan's crown jewel of deception, a performance crafted to lock in sympathy and seal her status as the modern duchess. And here's the brutal twist. Samantha isn't presenting herself as some bitter, jealous sister. She's painting herself as the one finally cracking the mask wide open. She leaves no room for doubt. Either Meghan's truth is genuine, or the Duchess has been living in a costume so flawless it fooled the entire world. That's a direct strike at credibility, not just reputation. But just when people thought Samantha's accusations were outrageous enough, the story detonated. Out of nowhere, a shadowy woman identified only as DL stepped into the spotlight, and she wasn't playing games. DL didn't throw shade or toss rumors. She arrived with cold, hard receipts. We're talking hospital bills, medical records, and whispers of a locked-down non-disclosure agreement. This wasn't gossip, it was evidence with teeth.
When she said, "I lost my father," we knew that she didn't lose our dad, she iced our father.
Her claim? That she was the real surrogate behind Meghan's royal pregnancies. According to DL, those glowing baby bump strolls through the spotlight were nothing but smoke and mirrors. Meghan, dressed in designer coats and cradling a perfectly staged bump for the cameras, was living a performance. Meanwhile, DL says she was the one carrying the actual royal heirs, alone, hidden, and silenced. DL paints a chilling picture. Promises of privacy and fair compensation that quickly twisted into betrayal. She claims the so-called royal fairy tale was nothing but a ruthless cover-up, so polished it erased her from her own story. While Meghan soaked in paparazzi flashbulbs, staging tender bump shots for worldwide headlines, DL says the real reality was unfolding in hidden clinics and secluded homes. Completely out of sight, completely out of mind. If even pieces of this are true, then Meghan didn't just bend royal tradition, she weaponized illusion itself. She turned motherhood into her most elaborate costume yet. At first, DL's accusations were brushed off as tabloid fodder, another outrageous rumor tossed into the gossip mill.
I'll tell you why. What she told the royal family, what she told Harry, wouldn't have jived, wouldn't have been consistent with the truth.
But then the details hit, and they weren't flimsy hints or recycled whispers. DL dropped vivid accounts of recruitment meetings in California, contracts signed behind closed doors, and long months of forced isolation that felt less like a sacred pregnancy journey and more like being locked in a royal vault. Suddenly, her story wasn't just scandalous, it was terrifying. And it left people asking, how much of Meghan's picture-perfect image was a lie from the start? DL paints a picture so raw, it's almost impossible to dismiss. She describes the aching loneliness of carrying not one but two royal heirs while being deliberately erased from the narrative. And this isn't some faceless internet troll typing from a basement. This is a woman bringing receipts with scars to prove it. DL speaks of postpartum complications that nearly broke her, spiraling medical bills that piled higher each month, and the crushing weight of being denied recognition for the role she claims she played. That's where gossip curdles into poison, because suddenly Meghan's glossy speeches about female empowerment sound chillingly hollow when compared to DL's version of events.
So all of the pictures, my point is, out there were inconsistent with the idea of a real pregnancy.
If her story holds any truth, Meghan wasn't lifting women up. She was burying one under the weight of a gag order for years. Critics have always called Meghan the actress-turned-duchess, but DL pushes it even further. According to her, Meghan wasn't just playing the role of a royal rebel, she was playing the ultimate role of all, mother. And the more DL spoke, the harder it became to laugh it off as some conspiracy theory. Her testimony didn't just challenge Meghan's image, it threatened to rewrite the royal storybook itself. With accusations this explosive, you'd think Meghan and Harry would scramble to shut it all down. A flat denial, a quick statement, even a DNA test could silence the chatter instantly. But instead, nothing. Just silence. Deafening, deliberate silence that only fuels the fire of suspicion. And in the ruthless court of public opinion, silence doesn't look like dignity, it screams suspicion. DL even went so far as to publicly offer to testify under oath, to hand over hospital records, and even to open the door for DNA testing.
And I thought, is she not contextually aware? She's trying to hide something. This is really sloppy pool.
That's not gossip, that's a direct challenge. Yet what did the Duke and Duchess do? Absolutely nothing. No explanation, no transparency, not even a weak rebuttal to calm the storm. For critics, that silence wasn't classy, it was calculated. Because if there's truly nothing to hide, why leave the entire world hanging with unanswered questions? And then there's Harry, once celebrated as the rebel prince, the one who defied royal protocol. Now he looks like either a partner in a secret cover-up, or a pawn trapped in someone else's elaborate script. The question hangs heavy. Did Harry know the truth all along, or has he been strung along just like the rest of us? Either way, their refusal to speak makes him complicit by default. That's the irony. The couple who built their empire on the slogan of speaking their truth suddenly found their voices missing. And not because the palace silenced them, not because tabloids blocked them, but because they chose to stay quiet. And in this story, that silence may be the loudest confession of all.
And when you're pregnant, there's not a pillow under your skirt. And there's live footage of her walking towards camera with her abdomen swaying left to right in a black and white checkered dress.
Royal births aren't private milestones. They're public spectacles, drenched in centuries of ritual and transparency. Princess Diana herself stepped out of St. Mary's Hospital just hours after giving birth, glowing, exhausted, but undeniable baby in her arms for the entire world to see. No mystery, no smoke and mirrors, just proof. And that contrast cuts like a knife. Kate played by the book, stepping out 3 times with picture-perfect appearances that upheld the royal ritual. But Meghan? She ripped the script to shreds. No hospital steps, no immediate press briefing, no solid confirmation of where the birth even happened. Instead, it was secrecy stacked on confusion, wrapped in a full-blown PR nightmare. And then came the inconsistencies that wouldn't die, the photos that didn't line up, the timelines that refused to match, and of course, the infamous folding belly clip. That eerie footage keeps circulating online like a ghost haunting her image, impossible to bury, impossible to forget. Critics argue Meghan didn't just ask for privacy. She staged her own motherhood like it was a Hollywood production. Carefully chosen props, designer coats, strategic camera angles, everything built for the perfect shot, but nothing that felt authentic.
A royal physician was not allowed to examine her womb. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but if I were pregnant with a royal child, you would want that child in the best care of the best medical practitioners that money could buy.
To royal watchers, this wasn't a fresh new chapter in the monarchy story. It was a broken pattern, a rupture in centuries of ritual, and in royalty, broken patterns spark suspicion like wildfire. What Meghan and Harry branded as privacy looked to many more like evasion, and every single deviation from tradition didn't calm the whispers. It supercharged the conspiracy theories that were already raging across the globe. Because when you strip away all the pomp and polish, one chilling question remains: why did Meghan's version of royal motherhood look nothing like anyone else's? This is the point where whispers stop sounding like tabloid chatter and start echoing like a constitutional crisis. Because if DL's claims hold even a sliver of truth, the question isn't just who carried the children, it's whether those children even qualify under centuries-old succession laws. Royal bloodlines aren't built on Instagram moments or glossy PR spin. They are rooted in lineage, transparency, and rituals that leave no doubt. Tradition demands that heirs are born from the royal womb, witnessed, documented, and sealed beyond dispute. But Meghan's pregnancies, they were cloaked in secrecy, wrapped in gag orders, and shadowed by timelines that seemed to vanish into thin air. And here's the danger. If surrogacy was involved but never disclosed, critics argue it could shake the very foundation of the monarchy. Not just gossip anymore, but a threat to the legitimacy of the crown itself. That's why many believe the palace needs to treat Harry and Meghan's behavior with deadly seriousness. Because if they don't, the antics of 2 royals could ripple into a storm that destabilizes the institution.
I think the palace and the machinery of the monarchy needs to take Harry and Meghan more seriously and make sure that Harry and Meghan's antics don't impact the future of the crown.
Picture it. 2 innocent children caught in the crossfire of a constitutional scandal, not judged for who they are, but trapped by the unanswered questions of how they arrived. That's not just drama, it's history teetering on the edge. And the monarchy doesn't deal in half-truths. It deals in absolutes. Either Archie and Lilibet were born in line with centuries of royal protocol, or the entire narrative collapses under the crushing weight of deception. That's why this is no longer a petty family feud. It's a full-blown crisis that could rattle the very institution Meghan once swore she was modernizing. When most people are cornered, they clear their names fast. But Meghan and Harry? The moment DL's claims began to spread, reports say their legal machine roared to life. Lawyers fired off letters and threats to media outlets, warning anyone who dared to amplify the story. But here's the twist. While threats flew everywhere, no actual denial ever landed. Not once did Meghan or Harry flat out say, "This is false, here's the proof." Instead, they played defense through intimidation, not evidence. And that's where the irony cuts deep. This is the couple who branded themselves as warriors of truth and authenticity, building an entire empire out of tell-all interviews, raw confessions, and glossy Netflix documentaries. Yet when faced with the simplest challenge, to disprove the surrogate story, they fell silent, hiding behind legal muscle instead of transparency. To critics, that doesn't scream strength. It reeks of fear. PR experts shredded the strategy, calling it the worst possible move. Because sure, legal warnings can muzzle newspapers for a while, but they can't silence the internet. They can't silence whispers spreading through TikTok, Twitter, and tabloids worldwide. In fact, the lack of denial didn't calm the storm. It poured gasoline straight onto the fire.
In this case, about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince Archie.
And now, it's burning hotter than ever. DL's story started sounding less like a rumor and more like a suppressed reality. Because in scandals like this, the real question isn't just what's said, it's what's not. And Meghan and Harry's silence? It screams louder than any lawyer's letter could ever hope to. As that silence dragged on, the tide began to turn hard. Polls revealed a brutal shift. More and more people were ready to believe DL's explosive testimony over Meghan's carefully polished narrative. The public, once dazzled by royal rebellion, began seeing cracks in the facade. The once unshakable Sussex brand, built on glossy Netflix documentaries, Oprah's primetime sit-down, and high-profile speeches about truth and authenticity, suddenly looked flimsy, like a house of cards trembling in a storm. Every clip, every tearful line, every carefully staged PR moment was dragged back into the spotlight and replayed through a new lens of suspicion. What once looked like courage and honesty now looked like strategy and spin. And with each replay, the empire Meghan and Harry built on their truth seemed less like a revolution and more like a performance unraveling in real time. What once looked like empowerment now reads like pure performance. Behind palace gates and Hollywood mansions, the whispers grew louder by the day. Meghan and Harry weren't just battling the press anymore, they were losing the war of credibility. Insiders painted a darker picture. A couple under siege, not from tabloids this time, but from the collapse of their own narrative. Allegations swirled of tension at home, of Harry and Meghan living less like husband and wife and more like business partners, desperately holding the brand together while the foundation beneath them split wide open. And Samantha, she didn't miss her chance to twist the knife. In her eyes, this wasn't karma. It was exposure. The fall of a carefully engineered image, a narrative built on illusions finally cracking under its own weight. The Duchess, who once promised to rewrite the royal story, now stood accused of authoring the greatest royal fiction of all time. And until Meghan speaks, that silence echoes like a guilty verdict. Here we are. Samantha Markle's accusations cut deep. DL's alleged surrogate story detonated, and Meghan and Harry's silence roared louder than both combined. What began as whispers of family drama has snowballed into something far more dangerous. A constitutional storm, a PR disaster, and a credibility collapse that no Netflix deal, no glossy cover, no Oprah sit-down can ever polish away. The Duchess once positioned herself as the ultimate symbol of truth, resilience, and reinvention. But the longer these claims hang unanswered, the more the narrative flips, from inspiration to illusion, from empowerment to theater. And that's the tragedy here. The fairy tale Meghan tried so hard to control is no longer hers to direct. Every unanswered question fuels suspicion, every silence writes a new headline, and every whisper chips away at the throne she tried to build. What once looked like empowerment now reads like performance. Behind palace gates and Hollywood mansions, the whispers only grew louder. Meghan and Harry weren't just sparring with the press anymore, they were losing the war for credibility. Insiders painted a picture of a couple under siege, not from tabloids this time, but from the collapse of their own carefully staged narrative. Allegations surfaced of tension at home, of Harry and Meghan living less like husband and wife and more like business partners, struggling to keep the brand alive while the foundation beneath them cracked wide open. And Samantha? She didn't miss her moment to twist the knife. To her, this wasn't karma. It was exposure, the unmasking of a duchess who once promised to rewrite the royal story, but now stood accused of authoring the greatest royal fiction of all time. And until Meghan finally answers, that silence will echo like a damning verdict. So here we are. Samantha Markle's accusations hit like daggers, DL's alleged surrogate story detonated like a bomb, and Meghan and Harry's silence has become the loudest response of all. What began as whispers of family drama has snowballed into a constitutional question, a PR nightmare, and a credibility collapse that no Netflix deal or glossy magazine spread can polish away. The Duchess once positioned herself as a shining symbol of truth, resilience, and reinvention. But the longer these claims hang unanswered, the more the narrative shifts, from inspiration to illusion, from empowerment to scandal. That's the real tragedy here. The fairy tale Meghan tried so hard to control is no longer hers to direct. Every unanswered question fuels suspicion, every silence turns into headlines, and every whisper grows louder in the court of public opinion. And trust me, this storm is only getting started. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more explosive updates, and I'll see you in the next one.